She just love that famous words of a Zoom meeting. You're on mute. Okay. I don't see Alan. Is Alan in yet?
Alan said he'll be joining, but a few minutes late.
Yeah. Okay. I'll mark him as here just so that we can continue. And Amy. I don't see Amy yet. I see Elaine. I see Joe. Paul Gonzer. Paul on yet? Okay. Andy James, I see you. Christopher Johnson. I don't see Christopher. Julie Redskin, I see her. Jake.
Yep.
Tinsley. Does Tinsley come on? I don't see Tinsley. We got June's on, I see. Ian. I don't see Ian. Alicia got you. Brian Carroll. Did I see him come on? No. Jamie Lewis. Haven't seen Jamie. Jonathan got you on. That leaves 9 so far, assuming Alan is coming on soon.
Alan's here.
And Alan is here. All right. So now we officially have 9.
Awesome. Did you get Aileen, Gary?
Elaine, yes, I did.
Okay. Perfect.
Yes.
All right. We'll keep an eye on, and hopefully we'll have a few more show up.
Yes, let's hope.
Okay. All right. With that being said, we are actually not at quorum at the moment. So I'm gonna take some liberties here and ask Nanita if we can proceed to public comment, and hopefully we'll have quorum after to vote on last minute's meeting minutes.
We have no one.
Dang, Nanita, I was hoping to stall.
I've been checking like all day.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. All right, Nick, maybe you're my staller.
No updates, Jake. No, I'm joking. I've got I've got some poetry that I've really been looking to get out there. No, thank you, Jake. Amy is traveling this week. She may pop on. Amy Ford, to be clear, is traveling this week, but happy to give an update on 2 items, one very timely and one that I think we've talked about quite a bit and got some more definitive information on that I can share with you. So first up would be sidewalks. Have made some good progress since we last met. The stakeholder committee, after 10 months of meeting bi-weekly, and I cannot share how impressive that is, that folks really stuck through with this, came up with some final recommendations for amending the ordinance. We have taken it to Mayor Johnston. He's given the thumbs up. Our internal executive branch vetting process, thumbs up on that. We've begun doing council briefings, and then we will be formally and publicly at the Land Use, Transportation, and Infrastructure Committee meeting on August 27th. On there. And so we will make sure to supply you all the details of that, and happy the September meeting. I think we'll still be in the midst of the council process, or probably right at the tail end on there. So happy to share details on that, but very excited to get that going. As you guys remember, assuming the council process goes smoothly, we would begin billing in January, and you would see the master plan kickoff on there, which this group has some formal roles in, and then certainly repair work taking place, and very excited about that. Second thing I wanted to talk about was an item we've talked about a few times in here that I think, I know it was not super clear because I didn't have a super good understanding on it. It relates to sidewalks, specifically when there is redevelopment or development occurring. Oftentimes, sidewalks will be a condition of that redevelopment. That is something in the ordinance that was maintained from kind of prior state, to where the department still has the authority to order that. there has been I don't want to call it a misconception, but I think an out of date understanding of what that trigger was. Originally, and I can't tell you the exact date when it switched over, it was if your work, the work that you're doing, say it's redoing a house, adding a floor onto a house, or doing major work within a commercial facility on there. If it was $100,000 or more, we would compel you to build a sidewalk. Subsequent to that, attorneys gave us counsel that say, gosh, you need a little bit more of a nexus or a real rational connection between the work that they're doing and the impact that it would have on the right of way. And so what does that mean? It means that a connection between the improvement and the impact on the right of way, we have to be able to prove that. And then also that the cost must be proportional to the cost estimate of the project on there. And really what that means is if someone does, adds a bird feeder to their house, we're not going to compel them to buy a sidewalk. Of course, that's an exaggeration on there, but there must be a relationship and a proportionality to how much a sidewalk costs to install and what is overall happening with the project. Sidewalks can be expensive, $40,000, $50,000 upwards of at times on there, depending on what's going on in there. And so a few examples of this. So if a single family residential property was scraped and then replaced with a new single family residential property, we would not consider that an adequate nexus to compel that sidewalk to be built because it is the same use, theoretically, is the same quantity of people that are utilizing that sidewalk. Now, if it was a single family home that was scraped and a duplex was built, that would be a nexus on there. Or if a large residential lot was split into smaller single family lots, that would also be a nexus because the project will result in greater impact, larger number of folks utilizing that sidewalk on there. Commercial is a little bit different, but same idea on there. As long as DOTI can demonstrate an increased impact on the right of way, we can require the frontage to be brought up to current standards, regardless of improvement costs. So if it goes from one restaurant to another restaurant, probably not. But if it goes from maybe a baseball card store to a restaurant, yeah, nothing against baseball card stores, but greater use of that right of way on there. And just one other clarification on this. This does not preclude our ability to require up-to-date sidewalks, right-of-way infrastructure if the project directly impacts the right-of-way. So this example would be that a single-family scrape and rebuild needs to move the driveway. If that's the case, if it is impacting the right-of-way, both the driveway and then the sidewalk will need to be brought up to standard as well as the curb and gutter because you're impacting those things when you move that driveway. So the example I gave earlier where there was no nexus because it was single family to single family, the exception would be if it directly impacts the right-of-way on there. Similarly, if a project removes or damages a sidewalk, we can require that detached sidewalk to go back in, even if it didn't meet that nexus text. These are not considered what we call exactions. We are exacting a sidewalk out of folks since these are changes necessitated by the project. And so I know that's something, Alan, and we've been talking about for a while. And I know that's somewhat complex. I did my best. I am not the expert on this, but I'm happy to answer any questions on either that or the sidewalk update.
Jonathan? Jonathan, you are not on mute, but we can't hear you.
How about now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thanks so much, Nick, for sharing that update. I think I have a couple follow-up on the questions, and thanks for looking into this. I'm trying to, I think, process two elements of that. One was the example of saying like a single family to a single family, there's no nexus. But this other situation where we said single family to single family, but we're moving the driveway, there's a nexus. And I think that's because the definition of nexus you gave there is a connection between the improvement and the impact on the right of way. So actually the use of the property, such as like single family or duplex, theoretically doesn't have like the number of people that live there has nothing to do with the right of way. So I think one few things I'm wondering. One, why is it that it's something like a duplex or say a lot split would be seen as having more impact on the right of way if the number of people living in the building isn't really connected to the right of way, I think would be my first question.
Yeah. And there's definitely some gray in it. So yeah, you took a 4-bedroom house and turned it into 2 2-bedroom houses on there. Would that have a greater impact on there? And these are the things project by project that our inspectors and in that development team will look at. And then going back to kind of the first question about single family to single family, but we move the driveway, it's less the nexus test. It's almost like a kind of side different authority that because in building that new driveway, they have cut through the curb and gutter, they would need to do that. And they've cut through the right of way. They're directly impacting the right of way as a part of the project. Then that authority, that nexus requirement, if it was simply a driveway, a lot of times they would still need to do and bring the curb and gutter and the drainage, of course, up to snuff. Does that answer your questions?
It does, and I think the follow on there is I'm wondering if there's a way we can engage with the folks who do the permit approval processes, both from this perspective, this nexus perspective, and the exaction perspective. And I'm asking largely because the difficulty we faced over around Sloan's, for example, is based on these examples, some of the large mansions functionally that have gone up recently would actually meet that exaction test. Like it was a small single family with a single driveway. What it replaced it with was a 3-car garage with multiple curb cuts. So theoretically, that now impacts the right of way. It should be in. But of course, we sort of folks living in the neighborhood, we don't know that that's going to be the way it's going to be built until it's at the final stage of construction. It's like way too late. So I'm wondering like who we need to connect with for the permitting process to say, don't just look at it's single family to duplex. Also consider, is the curb cut at all wider? Did it go from a 1-car garage to a 3-car garage or anything like that? I'm wondering how we can get that in the checklist, I guess I'd say.
I would say we are coming up on a big opportunity because I do believe, and this is my assumption, with 307 and how 307 will change how the city funds sidewalks, I think that will need to change. So this is in rules and regs, and I can email out the rule and reg as it relates to this. But there is interpretation based on kind of the authority in there. But I do believe we will need to update that as a function of 307 passing on there. And I think that'll allow us to be a little bit more precise in extracting what we want and also, trying to minimize situations where folks are double charged. And so I will send out that rule and reg on there. And I would say, I believe there is an appetite to look at that and make changes of that in light of 307. And to me, that's the best opportunity to do what you'd like to accomplish.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the explanation, Nick. Really appreciate it.
Yep, my pleasure.
All right, I think we have Alan up next.
Hey guys, just to dovetail what Jonathan had asked, I love kind of the opportunity to kind of revisit this because when we think about a rational nexus, as Jonathan alluded to, in our neighborhood, we've seen some single families go from a 3-bedroom single family home to a 5 or 6-bedroom single family home. So even if there's not a new driveway going in, I think we could make a rational argument that there is a greater impact on the right of way. So I'm excited we'll have a chance to do that. And then number 2, it sounds like, Nick, just to clarify, this is a Tabor restriction that we're dealing with. This isn't a city statute where we could work with council to change the statute. This is state.
That is my understanding and more educated understanding after having gone through the sidewalk. That nexus word, for me, that's the year of 2024 or the word of 2024. But yes, that is a requirement of that we are not taxing them. So yes, Tabor.
Thank you.
All right, Joe, I think your hand was next. You too are on mute, sir.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments coming from the vertical construction side, as they call it. First of all, in the building department, one easy way to do it, Jonathan, is if you touch it, you have to bring it up to code. So if it's in a commercial building, right, And you don't do anything to the bathrooms, and when they were built, they were fine. You don't touch it. But once you touch them, this sort of thing, once you put a driveway in or something like that, you've changed the whole thing. So that's pretty much an easy way, and everybody gets that. And that might be part of that. So I don't know, with repairing your sidewalk would do that. But if in a building you had to repair something, then they would either, it's a simple repair, or if it's more than that, you have to then bring it all up to code, is what it is. And then this is more for the lawyers in the group. Impact. I mean, adding 2 people to a sidewalk is no impact. I don't care. You know, you can have a house full of 1,000 people, but the sidewalk doesn't care how many people walk on it. So who's it impacting? I don't know. But however you guys want to interpret it, I just found that kind of humorous, you know. And of course, more people in your neighborhood walk on the sidewalk than you do. I mean, that's what the purpose is.
Yep.
You go to your car and you drive out. So, or you go for a walk. But anyway, I just thought it was funny. But anyway, again, if you touch it, and I think everybody understands that concept, that's pretty easy to grasp. And the inspector could say, yeah, you're doing something on the sidewalk, bring it up to code. That's all. Thanks.
Yep. That's a clear way. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
I think Joe actually maybe set me up well. I think what I'm curious about, Nick, and I know that effectively the certificate of occupancy is really what we're working against here. And so I guess I have some concerns about, like, I know with 307 we aren't really able to go out the same way we did before and be like, where's the sidewalk? But I know that in looking at a lot of the pictures of these lots that have recently gotten certificates of occupancies, they have fences around the entire right of way. That one of them I saw had like a fence within 6 inches of the street curb cut, which certainly extends into the right of way.
Yeah.
Nearly anywhere I can think in Denver. At that point, can we not go back and say, hey, we know you got your certificate of occupancy, but you have now done a takings from the public, and you have taken effectively public right of way and privatized it. And therefore we can initiate a private, like a sidewalk mandate.
You're right. That is definitely a question for the lawyers in the room on there. But, you know, and that just kind of even taking a step back, that issue of folks building into the right of way is not uncommon. And, you know, and that's going to be one of the biggest challenges as we go through the sidewalk program is dealing with that. And, you know, because ultimately, yes, it wasn't their property, or they didn't have authorization to build into the right of way of that portion of their property on there. So you're right. I mean, we have done, you know, I know what the Corey Merrill sidewalk gap project that we did some years back, that yeah, there was quite a bit of infrastructure, gates, you know, landscaping, irrigation, things like that. And having to, you know, work with the resident to get that moved out of the way. Easy to say, move out of the way. But get that moved that way. That was a huge challenge for that project. And that, you know, with the sidewalk ordinance, I think we've got the bill or the ordinance in a good spot, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. There's no ordinance in the world that will make putting sidewalk down easy. And that's okay. That's our job on there. But you're exactly right. If someone builds it's tough cookies when it's time to build the sidewalk in there. And we'll work with folks to make it as, you know, smooth a process as possible. But yeah, you're right. We would put the sidewalk down.
Is there any, and forgive my ignorance here, is there any communication between those inspectors that are looking for this and the builder or owner? Like, I'm curious if we can communicate, like, I don't know if we would do it like there's no nexus for this project, but any infrastructure you build into the public right of way, I mean, it does seem shockingly unknown by many of our residents.
Yes, agree.
I'd love to do a public education about the magical right of way and all the things we get to share in it.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct. I mean, because it occurs. I mean, there's no argument that it doesn't occur. So what communication there is, seems like maybe there could be some more communication.
Great. I love that. All right, any other questions for Nick or any other items on your list, Nick?
Good to go. Thank you.
All right, Nick, you did it. We now have quorum. Can I get a motion to approve last minute's meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
All right. I'll second. All in favor, raise your little virtual hand.
Aye.
All right. We have 10 voting in favor, including one excited attendee. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Jonathan, you were raised for both, so I'm going to assume you were a yes only.
Nope, thought I took it down.
No worries. Great. We got those approved. Awesome. At this point, we're going to jump into an update about solid waste.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rich Villa, the Director of Solid Waste, and hopefully I'll be able to share my screen. And everybody see that?
Got it.
Yeah. That's how I can do it.
Rich, would it be possible to speak up a little bit? It's coming up a little muffled.
Yeah, so sorry.
¿Podrías hablar más alto?
Can everybody hear me better now?
Yep.
¿Me pueden escuchar mejor ahora? Sí.
All right.
Maybe, do you mind putting Francisco in the interpretation channel? I think that's what's happening there.
Yes.
All right. I can't see it, so I can't control it. Sorry, guys. I'm not a big sharing on Zoom.
Because we see your title slide, so it's probably tucked away somewhere on there. And yeah, I can do a little introduction as well while if you want to, can vamp for you here on that. So Rich here, Rich is our Director of Solid Waste, so oversees the city's entire solid waste operations on there. As folks are familiar, in a couple years ago, the city changed how it structures and delivers solid waste, going from what was your just general fund supported program on there to what's called a volume-based trash pricing program. That is similar to sidewalks, supported by a fee to residents on there. Part of that included to whereas before your compost service was an opt-in and pay extra. So you'd pay, I think, $9.75 a month to do compost. Now compost is included in your overall trash fee on there. I think one challenge with that is bringing compost. It is very sensitive to things like contamination. And so has rolled out there's a major education component that goes along with that. And so what Rich is here to talk about is the compost rollout generally. This will have direct information for your individual districts that you all represent, if you're a council representative on there. And then Rich is also here to ask, I know there's general questions about solid waste service and how things are going. So that's what Rich is here to present. Rich, what do you think? You feeling good? You got it?
Yeah.
All right.
You can still see my screen. So,
yep.
Again, we're here to talk about the compost rollout. And, here's, the stuff that we look to capture in the compost program. It's mainly food scraps and yard debris. So when we did our rollout strategy, we were focusing on education and reducing the contamination that we were seeing in there. So when we expanded our service equitably, starting with the solid waste districts 2, 4, 5, and 8. Those were the ones that had our lowest when it was what we call legacy customers. These were the ones that were already doing compost, and we saw our lowest participation rate in these districts 2, 4, and 5, and 8. And that's where we have started. And then
And Rich, I'm sorry to interrupt you real quick. Your slides are not advancing on there. I'll have to give it a space bar or two. We're still on your cover slide.
Does that help?
Still cover. I may suggest unsharing and resharing.
Okay. I'm gonna try that. Sorry, everybody.
It wouldn't be a virtual presentation without technical difficulties, Rich. And a request from we do have a translator. If you could speak even a little bit louder, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, I have Nina on, so I think I'm gonna see if she can share, and maybe that'll help.
Yeah, make her a co-host.
Yeah, it's disabled for me, but I have it up so I can share it.
Give me 1 second. Okay, Nina, let me know if you can share.
Okay, can you go to the next slide?
Hey, we're advancing.
We're good. All right. Thanks, Nina.
And then, can you go to the next slide, Nina, please?
Yes. Maybe. All right.
All right. So again, as I was saying, when we do our rollout strategy, we're focusing on education and the reducing of the contamination. And so we wanted to expand our service equitably. So we started in the 4 districts that had the least participation in the whole city in our 9 districts. And so when we did our collection district approach, what we learned from after rolling out compost in District 2, where we just delivered a compost cart to everybody in that district, we had significant more contamination than what we were hoping for. Plus, we had a 15% of the carts we delivered, people said, please come and get them. We don't want to participate. So then what we did for 4 is we did an opt-in. So we sent letters to everybody in our solid waste collection district, and then asked them if they wanted to compost, please let us know what cart you want. And so what that did was we saw a significant decrease in contamination because we were capturing the people that actually wanted to compost versus giving everybody a compost cart and possibly giving them a chance to just put trash and things in it. So that approach worked real well in 4 and 5, and now we are actually starting the process in District 8. So and then we are able to grow our compost program within our available resources right now. Next slide, please, Nina. So here are some of our successes in the composting. So right now we have 53% of our residents have access to compost service. And by the end of the year, when we roll out our next 2 districts, it'll be at 62%. Right now, roughly 43,000 residents are composting. In 2023, we diverted 13,772 tons of compost. So those tons did not end up in the landfill. Right now, we're currently at a little more than 7,900 tons of compost. So we are on pace to even go higher than the 13,772. And then again, on our low contamination, and these are because we do an audit after every district that we deliver. So 10% of the carts that we audited were contaminated in District 2 when we did the opt-out. When we did the opt-in, so in Districts 4 and Districts 5, we saw only 2% of the carts were contaminated when we did them when we audited them. Next slide, please. So this is our compost tonnage. So in year 2022, you see we did a little more than 6,500. In 2023, we did almost 7,300. So there was an increase by 11% from 2022 to 2023. And then right now in 2024, we're currently at 8.4%. But again, this is only through July, so we still have 5 more months of data to add to it. Next slide, please. And again, this is just kind of a general idea about composting 101. You know, it just it uses this natural process to break down the organic materials into usable soil amendment. And as you can see, those pictures are some of the contamination that we see out there. You can see people put furniture, they put bagged items in there, they put, you know, trash and other things. And that's what we are hoping, you know, to not see as we continue with the opt-in, because the big thing is the high level of contamination in the load means that it goes to the landfill, and they do have an opportunity if there's too much contamination to not take the load. However, since we've done the opt-in, we haven't been seeing that because the contamination has been low. Next slide, please, Neil. So this is our compost rollout order. So as you can see, we've done 2, we've done 4, we've done 5, and the start we are doing 8. I'll talk a little bit about that here in just a minute. And then our last one for Q4 in 2024 will be our solid waste collection district 3. Next slide, Nina. So how did we determine the order of how we were going to roll it out? So prior to volume-based pricing, it was a subscription-based program. So if you wanted compost, like Nick said, you would pay a monthly or a annual fee, and you'd be able to compost. And we had 30,000 customers were in that legacy program. And so there are different pockets of the city that have significantly higher rates of compost customers, which I'll show here in just a little bit. But so again, we are beginning with the areas that had the lowest number of existing compost customers, and then also the lowest diversion rates. Next slide, please. So as you can see, the orange or reddish color is where the most participation was, and the green and the yellowish is where the lower amounts are. So you can see on this map, we are following where there's the least participation. Now these are council districts, but you know they do pretty much, that does align with our solid waste collection districts, because like council district 3 was our district 5. So next slide, please. So where are we now for as far as district 8? Next slide, please. So this is our solid waste collection district 8, which it covers Bear Valley, College View, South Platte, Fort Logan, Harvey Park, Marley, Marston, Overland, and Ruby Hill, including the council districts 2, 3, and 7. Next slide, please. So how we're doing the rollout in District 8. So the customers in District 8 have already received their direct mail from DOTI this week, asking them to sign up if they want a compost cart. So they are instructed to tell us what size the compost cart they want, a 65 or a 95. And if they get back to us by August 30th, they'll be, you know, set for priority of delivery. Starting in September, we will deliver the size compost cart that they have asked for, along with the kitchen pail and a compost guide. And then the week after we deliver their compost cart, their compost service will start. And then after we get our first initial list, residents can still sign up. So like, you know, if one resident has a cart and their neighbor said, hey, what's that? You know, they can talk to them and they can still sign up. And then we'll do a couple other lists and we'll deliver after that. So we'll we'll start delivering to those people after we finish our first run. Next slide, please. And then these are some of our communication strategies. You know, we do an annual Wastewise newsletter, direct letters, our Denver Trash and Recycling app, which we are trying to get all of our residents to sign up for. We do focus in rollout areas and citywide. We have HOAs and RNO outreaches. We do paid advertising campaigns, press releases, social media, and then social contact for our council offices. We do have Spanish outreach. We do door-to-door outreach. We also do compost-specific outreach, and those are done by some contracted community-based organizations. And then we just updated collateral and market materials and council briefings, things like that. And, you know, if there's ever any events that you would like us to come out and talk out, just please reach out to us and we'd be happy to. And you can see in the picture, that was one, me and another manager at an event answering any questions. Next slide, please. So, you know, as we grow our program, we do want to ensure we are minimizing contamination. So when we go out and do audits, we have our inspectors and some of our education team, and they go out and they pick certain areas and they just audit the carts. And so like the picture on the right is the audit cart, and we will leave them and also, you know, turn them around, and we will try to make a contact so that people understand that, you know, it's a new program and people, you know, might make mistakes and everything. And this is what we're trying to do, is just educate so that people understand to do the program correctly, because again, we are trying to minimize our contamination. Next slide, please. So we have 3 areas down. Area 2, again, that's where everybody got the cart and 15% opted out. The good outcome is 1,500 tons collected in 2023. And then right now, currently, they are our highest tonnage by volume for all of our districts as of the end of July. But we did have the challenges with contamination, and we're still dealing with those, unfortunately. For area 4 and 5, we did that opt-in and then sign up at any time. Those are the various neighborhoods from our area 4 and 5. And then people in those areas, they can still sign up now. So if somebody didn't sign up and then they see something, they're still able to sign up, and we will deliver a cart to them. Again, there was 2%, you know, contamination in those 2. So I think we have found a way to minimize our contamination. And we do that in direct education, and then we keep doing ongoing education in our auditing and cart selections. And then for area 8, so we're preparing for 8. We've sent the letters out. We'll be receiving, and as of probably about 2-3 hours ago, we looked and there was already 1,000 signups in area so far. So that's looking good for us as far as participation, and we're looking to start rolling those carts out mid September. And so if you have any questions about, you know, compost or anything, you can please reach out to me. And then, you know, the true expert on compost is Nina. So if you have any compost questions, please you know, you can reach out to Nina. So I'll open it up for any questions.
Joe, I believe I saw you first.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Rich, I don't envy your position, so please take these questions in stride. One is, you said as resources are available. So what resources aren't available that keeps you from, you know, bringing this out in a much, I don't know, more quickly, the lack of better terms? What don't you have been able to get this out?
So we're using existing resources that we have now, and so one of our challenges is equipment. So that would be one of the biggest things that we have challenges with, is equipment. And then
what are you doing about that? Yeah.
Well, we're working good with, with our fleet department and, trying to figure out ways to get some of our, trucks fixed and back on the road. But also the reason that we are rolling it out a district recorder, because we want to make sure that we're doing that education and those audits and stuff, because, we were, when we had a different, compost where we used to take it, they had changed the rules on us and said, we're only going to take these things because they were seeing high levels of contamination. And that was also not just in the city of Denver, but on the Front Range. So that is one of the reasons we want to make sure we are able to get the letters out. We want to make sure that we're going to deliver the carts and then do those audits and contamination. So it does take us a while to do that. And for us to do it quicker, we may, sacrifice some of that. And that's not one of the things that we're looking for.
And Rich, I
No,
think
and I
you
don't want you to
touched
do
on it.
that.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
I don't want you to do that, but I don't think our neighborhood's going to take 6 months to educate. It's you can put your food waste and you can put your yard waste in it, and you just got to be careful about it. I don't think that takes a huge education, and we're more than willing to have our council district have mass meetings on that. The other thing is, if you opt out, you still have to pay. Is that correct?
So what the charge and the volume-based pricing is based on your trash cart. So the only thing that will happen is once we deliver to a district, you will no longer receive that $3 credit that you can currently receiving that. So your payment will not change. So whatever you're paying now, you'll continue to pay that same amount.
Right. So there's no penalty to get it. They just don't get it. Right. I get it. Okay. That's all. And then do you have any information? I think that the schedule said 2025 for my district, Council District 5 was your intended rollout. Is that still holding true? I didn't see anything on your presentation to that effect.
Let me, because I'm not quite sure where I get our solid waste collection districts and the council districts kind of mixed up. So let me,
Okay.
let
We're
me look at-
Cherry Creek, Hilltop, Crestmore,
So I believe
that
you're-
area.
you're- Yeah, so you are still scheduled in 2025. We have not made that determination how we're gonna the order we're gonna roll out our last 4 districts in 2025.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick interlude, Joe, just to add to it, you get a discount for composting correctly because you're not filling the trash bin if you can downsize.
Got it.
All right. I'm gonna go a little out of order and go with Alan only because I know you had specific constituent concerns in your district here. Alan, do we have you online?
Hey, so sorry about that, guys. Forgot to unmute. Yeah, so just wanted to thank you.
Alan, I'm sorry. I think you accidentally muted yourself.
I'm so sorry. My question is a little bit unrelated to compost, and I just want to say thank you all for being so transparent on everything in the rollout. One question we've gotten from our neighborhood is a few folks that have it with trash or compost, miss for anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks in a row and putting in 311 requests and not getting responses unless they, reach out to the council office. And I know, like everybody else, there's constraints around supply chain and hiring. Or Rich, could you share some of the challenges that you all are facing and what kind of steps you all are trying to address in terms of a little bit more reliability with regards to
So yeah, so we do know that there are times that we do not collect on their day of service, but our goal is that we collect what we don't collect within 24 hours. So if you're serviced on a Monday, you should be collected on a Tuesday. Now, if people aren't getting, service for 2 or 3 weeks, definitely that's a problem, and we want to hear about that. And what we do on those is, we make my manager talk to the supervisor, and we put it, and we go figure out what's going on, why things are missed. Sometimes it's sometimes it's block construction, or it's just things that either we do identify. What we are trying to do also is when our drivers go by and they see something, the cart's blocked, the alley's blocked, or the cart's not out, is we make a route exception. And then so that and we are trying to figure out ways to educate, because sometimes people just don't know. There's a lot of times they put out their cart and everything's fine, but somebody comes and parks and blocks it. So we have our supervisors mark those addresses, especially those ones that say, hey, haven't been collected in 2 to 3 weeks, and we go out there and research and try to find out what's going on, like are they being placed correctly, things like that. So we do identify those, and each one of our supervisors keeps a list of those, what we call challenging addresses, so that we can get it fixed, and so it doesn't keep happening.
Thank you so much for that thoughts. And one quick follow-up question, since the rerouting, a few of our residents in North Denver have sent feedback to us that the street signs for street sweeping is conflicting with the day of trash pickup, so they don't feel like the area in front of their home is getting swept completely. So just wanted to pass on that feedback to you all as well, that there's a little bit of a conflict there in terms of scheduling, at least that we're hearing from the community.
Yeah, and yes, there is those, and it would take a lot to because we'd have to work with street maintenance to reroute the city to make it match, and I don't know if there would be a way for everything to match. But what we do is, we've offered, and we said that because the street sweeping only occurs on one side, is that the residents can put their carts across the street, and we will get collected. It's not going to block. Sometimes there's a place to put it up on if there's a little sidewalk, and we've instructed our drivers to collect it and put it back in there so it's not blocking. And then I've also been in contact with the street maintenance director, that if for some reason a street doesn't get swept, they can just call 311 and they will send a sweeper back to make sure that it gets swept.
But Alan, it is an issue that there's a few spots around town, and it's something Rich kind of talks about, something we're trying to do in the interim, and still looking for that, magic puzzle piece we can put together to make sure that those aren't conflicting on that. But definitely recognize that that's an issue in a few spots throughout town.
Great. Thank you guys for being so soon.
All right, June.
Thank you so much. My question is, so in that first district that you rolled these carts out to, there was a very high level of actually usage of them, but there was the contamination problems that turned it from a opt out to a opt in. And thinking about this from like a policy angle, that opt in model means that I'm guessing that there's a lot lower level of volume of actual compost that you're getting from those new areas which you rolled this out to. So my question would be, after the initial rollout, what strategies are you employing to actually ensure that there is a higher level or a higher proportion of folks in those areas that are actually opting in after the initial rollout, to make sure that over time we build up the compost volume from those places? And I know you're rolling out to new areas and we're rolling out to the entire city eventually, but what strategies are you using consistently to really make sure that everyone in that area gets the opportunity to opt in, and they get reminders, and they make sure that, especially as people move in and out of areas, that they can opt into composting in areas where it's already been rolled out to? I hope that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it does. And so just because our first thing is everybody gets a letter, and then if they don't want to, because sometimes people are just like, I don't want to do that. But we do send, we have an annual reminder that, we will be putting it in there that if your district has already been, delivered compost, you can sign up anytime. And, we do reminders, and things like that. And, I'm gonna turn this over to Nina. She's my diversion manager, and I think she can answer this a little bit better than me. Nina?
Hi, everyone. Putting a face to the screen controller. So as we roll out a district, or as we continue on in the rollout district, we are still doing outreach and education in the districts that we've already rolled out to. So especially, I'll take our tabling events as an example. We're focusing our schedule on the rollout to go with the rollout schedule, but we're still doing events across the city. So we're still doing a lot of events in District 2 to continue to get support and proper composting going in those areas. So that'll continue to be going on. Once we finish the kind of initial rollout, the messaging will change, right? It won't be, hey, we're rolling it out for the first time ever, maybe. It'll just change slightly to be a bit more encompassing of, you can still roll out. Your neighbors may have compost. Now you can keep joining in. We have found that word of mouth works really well for compost, especially in the areas where it's very new. People do learn from their neighbors and their colleagues or their family. So that's really effective, and that's been true with kind of the spread of recycling too. We're looking back in our city, compost is relatively new compared to how long we've had recycling service, and that word of mouth and kind of that ongoing education really helps to grow these programs. So it'll just be a slightly different message, but continuing outreach and education.
Thank you, Nina. Andy?
Thanks. I could probably talk about solid waste for the next couple of hours, so I'll try and limit myself to just maybe a couple of questions. One very similar to what June brought up. I wonder if you have some more specific numbers. You talked about 11,000 carts went out in area 2 with a 15% opt-out, and then switching to opt-in in area 4 and 5. How many carts went out total? Like, what percentage of people opted in? I mean, if it was 10% of people opting into compost, that's a problem versus, 70%.
I know when we did District 4, which was the next one, and that was our lowest participation by far than anybody, and that was the Montbello Green Valley Ranch area. We had 410 people participating. And then we delivered roughly, Nina, help me out with 1,500 carts?
No, it was a little over 2,000. Okay. So we're at about, I can pull the numbers up, but I think we're 20-something% now in District 4.
So, and then do you know for 5 that we just finished?
It's a little higher, but we're in the 20s for both districts. And in District 4, that was about a 400% jump in participation from the initial customers. So we're expecting that area to stay quite low relative to our other areas because it started so low. But, we're still happy to see a few thousand joining in.
Yeah, definitely better than no one joining in. But I think that's really good. Those sort of numbers are really helpful for us to know as well, in terms of it's still pretty low participation in a lot of these new areas. Similarly, in your slideshow, you said currently 53% of residents have access to compost. I assume that means 53% of residents live in district where they could get compost, not, okay. Yeah. So it's a much lower percentage. Yeah, okay. And then I guess just the last piece is something I've been trying to think about for a little while. Recycling is easier with contamination, unless it's like a plastic bag or a hose. It's easier for the recycling company to just throw it out than compost. Seems like it'll contaminate the entire load, less so with recycling. I want us to be thinking about how to not rely on people being perfect to have a recycling system that works. Like, I have people turning left on a red light in front of my house quite regularly. People don't follow the rules when it comes to a lot of things. And I just don't think we can we can't build a recycling program around expecting people to be perfect. So like, I don't know how we do that, but it's something that I think we need to be thinking about and working on.
Nina, do you remember? So we took a couple council members on a trash tour. Nina, do you remember the figure they were bragging about Denver's quality of recycling? What was that figure?
For compost, I'm going to give us a shout out for our compost contamination.
Okay.
So we're at about, I think, a 2% contamination level in our compost. So people are doing, sorry, my dog is having a fun time next to me. So we're doing really well on educating and getting compost into the hands of people who are going to do it correctly. Yeah, it's a huge improvement from our previous compost processor. You know, when we weren't doing quite as much outreach and education in that field, we had much higher contamination levels. So, you know, of course, we know people aren't going to be perfect all the time. That's why we do. Sorry. That's why it is an ongoing contamination, you know, an ongoing education opportunity. We are looking at some technology too to automate some of that for us. You know, it's a little too early to kind of share that out, but it's something that is advancing in the industry. And you know, at this point, the recycling, not to get too nerdy about it, but the recycling infrastructure is a bit more mechanical. There are a bit more checks in the process. The sorting mechanisms are a bit more advanced than it is for compost, but that will probably change over time. The compost field is growing, so it's likely, and that's kind of the buzz around, is that we'll get to a place where there are a bit more like safeguards in place for the stream, but it's a younger industry on the processing front.
Appreciate that. Some good answers there. I definitely have more I could say, but I'll leave it. I just want to leave it with a plug. I don't know if there's plans to bring them back, but Kaser used to do the solid waste tours. I did one in 2022. It was amazing. Everyone made fun of me for being excited about solid waste tour. But if there's any chance to bring those back and educate people on how those systems work, it was hugely enlightening for me. And I think would be great for council members, for staff, for folks like on boards like this. Would be great. Thanks.
You're among nerdly friends, Andy. Yeah, it is awesome.
Yeah.
We might have to do a board field trip if those reopen. All right. It looks like we don't have any other questions. Rich and Nina, I don't know if you have anything to add, but we're very appreciative for your time today.
No, just you know, feel free to reach out if you guys have any questions. You know, we're always around to answer. And you know, again, if there's anything, you know, like tours or anything like that, you know, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I think it's a big thing that you guys have an event or something. You know, we do find out a lot of people come to our table. Usually it's about when am I getting my compost cart, but they also do ask other questions. So, you know, we'd be happy to go out and at any event or anything. And just want to thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you both so much. All right, we continue our tour around Denver. This week we'll be diving into the area for Council District 3, which is Councilwoman Torres's area. Includes, just for framing, includes like Barnum, Lalma, Lincoln Park, Sun Valley, West Colfax, and Westwood. I think I got most of them, but I'll hand it over to the area project manager for Council District 3.
Hello, everyone. Nick, was that my cue, by the way?
You're on.
Okay, guys. Hi, everyone. I was told to do 3 things today. Number 1, introduce myself. Number 2 was to talk a little bit high level about the projects, DOTI projects in District 3. And then number 3, answer as many questions as possible at the end. So that being said, hello, everyone. I'm assuming you can see my screen. Yes. And it says District 3 projects. All right. I had a nightmare that I was in the wrong meeting with the wrong slides or something like that, right? But it's good. My name is Rolando Melgoza. I am a community designer, aka project manager with the city. And so I wanted to start off a little bit by talking about my background. So lots of firsts. I am the first generation in my family not to have been born into an agricultural lifestyle. I'm a city kid. Okay. Number two, I am the first generation in my family who learned another language other than Spanish. So I like to say my first two languages because I have two native languages, English and Spanish. Another first is I am the first one in my family to graduate from college. And I enjoyed engineering so much. I did it twice. So I also have a master's degree in civil engineering, which means I guess I can do numbers or something. I think that was the takeaway from all of those years, right? I started off my career collecting traffic data. So it was during the recession, if you remember that traumatizing time, right? So you're the first one in your family to go through all that college. And then at the very end of it, it's like, there are no jobs. What do you have to show for it, right? And so I was actually living on the other side of the country in Portland, Oregon, and made it here to Denver to work at a place called Dr. Cog. And I was out in the field collecting traffic data. So yes, I was out there counting cars. How many are going through the intersection? How many are turning left? How many are turning right? And I did that for about 2.5 years. After that, Denver's always had a healthy job market. So I was like, what's out there? I worked for 10 years as a traffic engineer. So when I was hearing, I think Andy was saying that someone turned left on a red signal. Ouch, right? That burns a little bit. But so that's what I did. So to bring that experience into this role, 2 years now that I've been with the city, it's the combination of wondering how can I be like this well-rounded individual, right? Not just an engineer, but what else goes with that? And that's how I learned about city council. That's how I learned about working with different groups, advocacy groups, all of that. And then the pictures here that I threw up on the slide have to do with traveling because now as an engineer we're taught to be very cautious, I think, in life, right? So once I got all of the things that one would want to have in life done and ready, you got to have the house, you got to have all this other stuff, you got to have the family. Then it's like, cool, now what do I do? So I've been getting into traveling quite a bit, traveling with my partner of 21 years. Yes, I said 21 years. That's a long time. But check it out here. So we have Big Ben on the top left. We have Guadalajara. If you're ever wondering why I'm so cheap during lunch, it's because that condo in Guadalajara, Mexico, is not going to buy itself. So I've been saving and saving, and one day I will have that. We also have Banff National Park in Canada. And yes, the water is that turquoise. Highly recommend it. In the bottom middle there, we have Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, which is a great place. On a Saturday night, it feels like you're in Lodo, but that's okay. In the bottom right, I was in just outside of Medellin, Colombia, which is a fun place. Like to realize that a place like that actually exists in the world is pretty amazing. And long story short about traveling, I feel like the more you travel, the more food you can try. And I think the world's problems will be solved with great food. That being said, what is a community designer? So, big picture, I work as a liaison between DOTI and city council. So, working with the council aides, sometime smoothing over some of the conflicts that we may have, some of the questions that we may have. Community outreach is a big part of it. Having spent many years on the engineering side, we see how detailed we get, and then sometimes we need to take a step back or several steps back and say, well, let's take a look at why we're here, why we're doing this project. Maybe not everyone uses the same technical vocab that we use, so it's helping people understand our projects. We also work with our area traffic engineers on the 311 cases, right? It's our equitable way to bring in these requests in and try to address those. We also, and this is why the picture with the cats, right? We also try to herd the cats. We have so many different projects going on, so many different groups with different goals a lot of the times. So it's saying like, hey, you said that you're going to install this water main, and you over here said that you're going to pave the road. Let's try to work together so that we don't pave the road and the next day someone comes in and tears it up, or someone plants a tree and then the next day someone comes and tears that up. Or even thinking big picture, how is this corridor study going to impact District 3? Some other ways you might see the DOTI group out there is we work with our planning group, we work with our OCBE group, solid waste we just learned a lot about, parking, street maintenance, the ops group, and also the wastewater group. So one of the bigger projects that we have in active construction that I want to highlight for everyone is the West Colfax Avenue project. You may have seen this one here on the news a couple of months ago, but the West Colfax project, which is from if you a little bit west of Federal, all the way over to Sheridan, it is adding landscaped medians. So it's a beautification project, but also big picture, it's a pedestrian safety project, right? So where you had, we call it a twiddle, a two-way left turn lane, where lots of driveways, people can turn in and out of several places along West Colfax, and these medians provide a little bit of an exercise in access management while at the same time preserving and enhancing where pedestrians can cross with bulb outs, making not only the vehicle more visible to the pedestrian, but also the pedestrian becomes more visible to the vehicle. Also brand new ADA ramps, much wider sidewalks, and then safer boarding areas for our buses. And I was told that the first 3 new pedestrian friendly street crossings have been finished. So next time you're in the area, check them out at Yates, Xavier, and Winona Streets. Aside from the construction, we also have the design projects. So the one I'll highlight here is the Santa Fe Streetscape project. I'll say it's also my favorite one that I'm working on. And we were just out there. If anyone attended First Friday and you came to our tent, the one that had the big DOTI sign on it, the picture on the right, or hold on, let me take a step back. And so with the Santa Fe Streetscape project, for many years, we had been told that, hey, as pedestrians, it can be tough to walk along the narrow sidewalks. If only we had more space. So if you go back also to like the COVID time, and there was the kind of that push, right, where everyone was going outside and they said, man, we really like our streets. Let's have some more space, right? And so that this project benefited from that. It also benefited from, I believe, the Denver Streets Partnership, the bid, lots of people understanding the historical significance of Santa Fe. And so that led to a pilot project where there used to be 3 northbound lanes on Santa Fe. So we said, let's do a pilot project to see if we could take away one of the 3 northbound lanes, and with that width from the lane that we took away, which is around 12 feet, what if we give that space back to the sidewalk? So we'll just assume 6 and 6 on each side, right? And fast forward a couple of years, we've proven that the world did not end, right? You know, we all survived, and traffic is still flowing with an acceptable level of service. And now we are designing the permanent phase, right? So instead of the plastic bollards that you see, the white lines that are in there, we're going to extend the sidewalk with concrete to about where you see those bollards and those white lines. And right now we've been reaching out at the community events, making everyone aware of the project, showing them some concepts, showing them renderings, what it could look like, surveys, asking people, now that we're going to have this extra space, what do you want to see in that extra space? And just to give you all a little preview here, the number one thing that we always hear is more trees, right? More shade. People say, if I go to, like, say, a restaurant, maybe a coffee shop, and get some ice cream, when I go outside, I'm like, okay, I'm done here. I want to go home. Because there's nowhere to sit. So that's the second thing, is people say, if only there were seating. At the First Friday event, we were right at 9th, and we could see people grabbing their food and sitting down with their legs just kind of stretched out into the street. Now, with the August First Friday, that's the only First Friday where the entire street is closed, right? But if you go to the September First Friday, same thing. People are getting their food, they're sitting out there, legs are out in the street, but the street isn't closed. So you see the cars going by there. So that just kind of shows you the need there of having some seating, or rather the desire, right? You know, that's kind of the proof there that of what everyone was saying. And so that's a fun project. And then the picture on the right there, we're also working with our green infrastructure group. So this is the debut that they had of this rollout plot of what a potential bulb out curb extension, if we decided to include plants, what that could look like. So community was able to see that at the First Friday and say, like, aha, so this is what the plants are going to look like. And then also, I didn't have any pictures of this one. I just had a bunch of engineering drawings, but I was like, nah, pictures are better. Safe, slow streets. So Knoxport is an example. If any of you have attended the Knoxport public meetings, we've had 2, but big picture on what those bike paving programs are. So we have, in a lot of cases, some outdated infrastructure in terms of how those bike lanes were laid out. Bike design standards have changed quite a bit over the 20 years since those were first installed. And so whenever we have a paving project, meaning that the road has potholes, it's ready for a new surface, that's the best time if we're going to make any striping changes. New asphalt loves new paint. New paint loves new asphalt. Match made in heaven, right? So we make sure to time those, right? And a lot of times, since the road's not going to get any wider, right? We have to think of the trade-offs, right? What does everyone want? If we want the safer bike lane, sometimes it requires a buffer, maybe some sort of raised vertical elements. And sometimes there could be trade-offs, usually parking. If you've seen the news, that's kind of what we have there. So know that those projects are happening all over town. Some of the higher profile planning projects that you may have heard about, Denver moves bikes. There's an update. We just recorded some instructional videos last week. So hopefully everyone is signed up to get updates on those. And the big push right now, at least the one that I was a part of, was to make sure we have this map where you can log in, you can make comments on the routes on that are on the map, say this route needs this, it needs that. I wish there were a route here, and we're taking all of that information in and updating the Denver Moves Bikes plan. There's also safe routes to school. That seems to be a really hot topic. Once school gets started, everyone seems to remember, right, about schools and all the zones and everything around the schools. Then we also have the Vision Zero, which you may have seen. It's the goal of zero transportation related fatalities by a certain year, I believe. Some other things that you might see out and about: maintenance crews, paving crews, sign crews. Our citywide speed limit is, unless otherwise posted, is going to 20, has gone to 20. There's also utility work, Excel's out there, Denver Water's out there. We do work with everyone to try to make sure we're all on the same page, right? They have to get their permits through us, and that's how all that works. And then also know that the 311 cases that do come into us, I'll give you an example. If someone is asking for an all-way stop sign, that's one of the number one types of requests that we get. And with the engineering background, I can tell you that there are certain warrants that must be met for an all-way stop sign to be safely installed. Because if we start to deviate from those warrants, depending on what the case is, we could actually introduce some new danger to that intersection, which is the exact opposite of what we're trying to do, which is make it safer, right? So there might be different toolbox items that our area engineer would recommend in a situation like that. And know that if you've sent in a 311 case and you're waiting for it, maybe you want an update, you can always reach out to me and we'll just track it down, see where it is in the queue. It's a pretty long queue, but from the community's point of view, if they're not used to sending in a 311, the expectation might be I sent it in today and tomorrow I expect it to be done, right? Or it could be if I send it in today, maybe 6 months from now, right? So we can figure that one out. And with that, okay, I'm ready for the third part of what I promised I would do, which are all the questions. There's usually one.
Alan.
Alan, hi, Alan. How are you?
Hey, Orlando. Good to see you. Thank
Good
you
to
for
see
joining
you.
us today. I very much enjoyed your presentation. And forgive me, I sometimes I have an ADD moment. Did you touch on Morrison Road at all, and kind of what's going on there, or what has gone on there recently? And if you did, ignore my question. But if you haven't, could you touch on that for us?
Yeah, so Morrison Road is another one of the streetscape type projects that we have. And right now, this is actually perfect timing. So we just received, I believe, 60% plans. So we're gearing up for that next public outreach phase. If anyone is in the Westwood neighborhood, surrounding neighborhoods, look for more info. If anyone here has a good contact for Westwood, the original plan was to bring these plans from the 60% out to Chili Fest, but I was told last week that Chili Fest was canceled for this year. So I'm kind of scrambling to find what's a good alternate event to that so we can bring that out. But so if anyone has that, you want to put that in the messages or send that to me later. But yes, lots of good information coming out there.
That's great. And while we're on Westwood, quick follow-up question. What's the latest on the Via Verde loop? Are there any segments of that might be completed in the next few years?
In the next few years, yes. So we had good timing. Alan, I feel like maybe you were in on the meeting or maybe you were spy. How do you know this? But timing's good. We just had an update with Councilwoman Torres, and um there are so we're looking at a schedule. We are finalizing some of the design details, but I will say that as part of the Via Verde project, we also have a project adjacent to it for our neighborhood transportation management program, which is a neighborhood focus effort to really to slow down to traffic calming, also improve crosswalks, crossings, and some of the NTMP related projects for that neighborhood, they intersect with the Via Verde one. So as we get ready to build the NTMP project, then Alan, I guess my answer is this year or early next year is when you'll start to see the first parts of the Via Verde coming in.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, June.
Yeah, quick question. I know the Federal Boulevard BRT project is not entirely in DOTI's hands. That's a collaboration very much with CDOT. There was just some excellent reporting that came out today about the Federal BRT project, about some of the, about essentially Federal getting widened to accommodate for bus lanes in that area, sort of District 3 where that plan lies. Has CDOT talked to you all about sort of the plan to widen Federal there? Has there been pushback from your side? Like, in my mind, that is such a dangerous road. Whenever I've looked at the data or statistics or I've been out there, it's like, why would we ever want to widen this, even to accommodate that bus lane? So has DOTI advised any one way or the other on sort of that specific part of that proposal?
Yes, thank you for that, June. So we could probably spend the next day and a half talking about the meeting that we had with CDOT. So number one, yes, we have been chatting with CDOT about the BRT. Number two, we understand widening, what all of that is. I think, and I haven't read or seen the story that you're referencing, but I'll be interested to check the news out. I will say that when we were just discussing widening, it was from the point of BRT, what defines BRT. There was conversation about having a dedicated lane to BRT. In some sections of Federal, it's already 6 lanes, so 3 and 3. That would be an exercise in repurposing 1 lane each way solely for BRT. And some of the narrower sections which extend into District 1, there are only 4 lanes, 2 and 2. And so we have, and that's where the conversation was like, wait a minute, we can't just widen that, right? You know, there are homes right there, and so there is a separate project, but working with this project about essentially it's queue jumping to be able to progress those BRT buses at the signals, at the signalized intersections to still be able to move up and down without being stuck in traffic, if that makes sense. And we are also aware of the impacts of green infrastructure, especially on the south end, right? Where it's a concrete valley down there, right? We have the concrete from the road, you have the concrete from the attached sidewalks, not a lot of greenery. And so we're working through all of those details right now. I believe Jake is next.
Yeah, I just had a quick question, just as we're thinking about District 3. I think one of the neighborhoods that to me stands out as just some connectivity challenges. is La Alma Lincoln Park, particularly in how it connects to the rest of the district. Basically, 13th Avenue is the primary ground corridor across effectively the rail corridor, which is kind of the hardest part to navigate. Are there anything we're looking into on how to potentially connect those two neighborhoods without potentially getting stuck behind a coal train for like 35 minutes or whatever? I think, maybe we steal from Medellin those metro cables if you were there. But
Very good. Yeah.
are there any plans to kind of have maybe an overpass or underpass option to allow the community to better connect?
So that would be at 13th, and what would at the tracks you're talking about, kind of
Yeah,
by
like
like
13th
the
and
10th.
Pecos?
Oh, well, I think at that point, do we start getting in near Barnum Yards? Is that
Yes,
the area we're thinking of? Okay,
it's just north of Barnum Yards.
okay. Um, I do not have a specific project that I can think of right now that talks about any grades separation, but that's a good question, and let me look into that to see what we have.
Yeah. 8th and Colfax are not the friendliest pedestrian corridors.
Yeah, understood. Okay. Anyone else? No one's gonna ask me for an always stop sign that. Okay. Okay.
Maybe for
Well,
the coal trains.
yeah. Okay. With that, thank you, everyone. I hope I get invited back at some point in time and get to talk to everyone again and give you some more updates on projects. But thank you all. Appreciate your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Rolando. All right. We love Nick so much. We want to hear from him twice tonight. Nick, will you give us a update on Dr. Cog?
Happy to. And I'll talk for a sec, but Anita, could I get the sharing privileges when you have a moment on there? So yeah, it was a little shout out from, I did not realize that Orlando is a Dr. Cog graduate on there, or a Cog graduate. I consider myself the same. I worked for the Houston Galveston Area Council, which is the Council of Governments and Metropolitan Planning Organization in the Houston region prior to coming here. So today, I'm going to talk just a little bit about Dr. Cog, what's going on. We're at a quieter period right now, but that doesn't ever mean that it's a bad opportunity to think about and get prepared for upcoming activities there. And Dr. Cog is a very critical player in the regional and by extension Denver transportation scene, and is a major place where a lot of funding decisions are made on there. Let me see. Anita, still do not have those privileges. So I'll paint you a visual picture verbally on here as we go through here. So Dr. Cog, it is a planning organization. Their mission is local governments collaborate to establish guidelines, set policy, allocate funding in areas of transportation, personal mobility, growth and development, and aging and disability resources on there. And so most relevant to this group, of course, is their activities around transportation. Dr. Cog is comprised of Denver and 8 surrounding counties, a little bit of well.
Uh-oh, I think we lost Nick for a second here. I'd fill in the gaps, but Nick's got the better details. Let's see if he's able to rejoin us here shortly.
What happened?
Oh, I see him coming back.
Oh, I was like, you vanish.
Here I am. I think I may have been downgraded before being upgraded here on here. So, oh, still says disabled attendee screen sharing on there. So I'll talk a little bit more, Nanita, if you're able to get that for me. So DRCOG, Denver and the 8 surrounding counties on there. It is controlled by a board of directors that is comprised of local elected officials from all of the member municipalities. I think it's somewhere on a good day around 58 members of the DRCOG board. Everyone has one except Denver on there, who has 2. And Denver has historically had one appointee from the mayors and then one appointee from city council. So for previous 5 years, I was the primary member for DRCOG. And I think, gosh, through that whole time, it was on the council side, it was Councilman Flynn with then Councilman Jolin Clark as his alternate. When Jolin left to come to the executive branch side of things and to be the executive director of Parks and Rec, he was replaced by Councilman Lewis, is Councilman Flynn's alternative on that. Currently, under the Johnston administration, Adam Paul is the primary for the mayor on that. You may remember him from such mayorships as Lakewood, but Mr. Paul now is the regional affairs director under the mayor. And so he is now our primary. I am his alternate. It's been nice, I will say, as much as I love DRCOG work, to get a few Wednesday nights off and not have to, all right, we're in business. And not have to stay there late on it. But it is a very critical organization. So assuming you can see that on there, you can see the slide here with the background in the map. Great, thank you.
That's super.
In there. So that gives you kind of an idea of the breadth of that it's covered. Talked about 58. I'm glad. I think that was the number that I said on there. There's also non-voting representatives from RTD as well as CDOT on there that attend the meetings. And there's a picture of the group. So really kind of what I want to talk to, and this is a brief introduction because it's not a lot going on right now, but there's 2 major plans that DRCOG produces. And these are required of them as both a council of government, well, really technically as a metropolitan planning organization. And so metropolitan planning organizations are all throughout the country. Like I said, I worked for the COG and Metropolitan Planning Organization in Houston. Here at the Denver Regional Council of Governments serves as the MPO. And 2 major plans. A lot of plans come out of there, some dealing with other things, some dealing with planning on there. But really the 2 most relevant, I think, to this group are the Long Range MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan. And this is a plan, this was just implemented earlier this year, just in May of this year. And it really is that vision over the next 25 years or so of what transportation plans are we going to implement over there. It is fiscally constrained, and in this context doesn't mean that we have to have the money in the bank on there, but really we have to use reasonable assumptions on what funding will be available on there. So not quite as tight as the TIP that we'll talk about here in just a second on there. But really is like all planning process is a very collaborative process to build it. And really that is kind of the regional roadmap for regional projects throughout that entire 9-county region on there. Now, getting into more short term and where the real excitement typically lies is the Transportation Improvement Plan, or TIP, you'll typically hear it referred to. And this identifies all of the state and federally funded surface transportation projects to be implemented in the Denver region, which is what we call the entire DRCOG region. Our most current plan covers the fiscal years 24 through 27. And so you'll always see these plans on a 4-year basis on there. But we're impatient, and so typically they are updated on a 2-year basis, every 2 years. And it takes upwards of 15 to 20 months to fully complete an update to these transportation plans on there. The unique thing or semi-unique thing about how DRCOG and how the Denver region handles their TIP funding is that they split it into 2 buckets. One is the regional pot, and then one is the sub-regional pot. So 20% of that funding goes to the regional pot that is competed for on a regional basis, meaning all 58 municipalities that are part of DRCOG, they compete for that funding pot on there. And typically those are our big projects. Those are the very transformative, large regional projects. One example, and probably the most relevant, is the 16th Street Mall. A fair amount of funding for the 16th Street Mall reconstruction, which is not just a pedestrian mall, it is a transit mall. It is the artery between Union Station and Civic Center Station for transit, one of the highest used transit lines in the state on there. That was at least partially funded through the regional forum on there. And again, that is federal funding, different flavors of that. If you're familiar, it can be congestion mitigation, air quality funding. It can be surface transportation block funding on that. All goes to compete there. The other 80% is split out into what's known as the sub-regional forums. And what that is basically think of mini Dr. Cogs in each of the 9 counties out there. Denver gets a pretty good deal because we are a city and a county. So we tend to agree with each other within that. But that sub-regional forum makes decisions based on there's a number of factors that go into amongst those 9 counties, things like population, existing road miles, other factors on that then each of those sub-regional forums has its own dedicated pot of funding. Ultimately still has to be passed by that larger 58-person full board on there, but gives these individual counties a little bit more control over where they would want to see these projects done. Now, these projects still need to be regional in nature on there, and a lot of that just has to go, they're coming through a cog and the nature of federal funding on there. But with each tip cycle is what they're called as we develop new tips, that sub-regional forum will meet open meetings similar to a Dr. Cog meeting on there and make those decisions. That is a 5-person board, and it typically has been, it's only been around for I think 3 or 4 years on there. It is a 5-member board comprised of the 2 primary members, the 2 alternates, and then a 5th person appointed by Denver mayor on there, and make decisions and come up with a plan of programs or projects to then be funded on the regional or through the sub-regional fund on there. We've used that for a lot of different projects, bike lane projects, did cover some additional parts of the 16th Street Mall also through our sub-regional. One of the longer nights I've ever had was explaining the regional benefit of the 16th Street Mall to the broader board. Didn't do great, lost half of what we were asking for, caught it, but we're able to re-up the money that we were needing from that process through the sub-regional forum on there. So that is kind of the almost said nexus. That is the world of Dr. Cog, and really I think how it impacts this group, or the most interesting part for this group on that timing wise. So the 24 through 27 transportation improvement plan, the TIP, that was adopted in 2023 on there. Obviously these plan goes on the federal fiscal year, so kicked off in October of 23. The next plan will be the 26 through 29, and I would anticipate probably late this year, getting more serious early into next year. The vast majority of the public engagement will start taking place early next year with an intent that plan is accepted or approved and accepted around this same time, around August, September period of 2025 of next year. And so certainly more updates to come as we get to that portion on there, but I will stop there. Happy to answer any questions. Alan.
Nick, this is really great. Thank you for sharing this with us. Where do the bylaws from Dr. Cog get structured? Is that under state statute, or is it like a regional district? The reason I'm asking, I've heard, Denver having 2 seats for this large of a metropolitan area seems a little disproportionate to the population. I've heard conversations in places like Cincinnati that they're thinking about reforming their MPO in terms of having more proportional representation. Do you have any idea of the background of how the structure comes about?
So I think it varies depending on it. And interestingly enough, the Council of Governments that I worked for in Houston just had a citywide ballot initiative that said, hey, if we don't have more proportional representation on there, we're out. And folks voted for it Now, how that's being implemented, I don't actually know. I try to keep up somewhat on there. So it is a mixture of, there's some federal requirements, there's some state requirements, but ultimately that bylaws is amended and accepted by the board of directors. You say, well, great, that doesn't really help us. That's still the same voting universe of folks on there. So that's a complex question. Well, it's not a complex question. It's a challenging question on there, you know, and a lot of the smaller communities would argue, hey, this is our chance to be at the big table. You know, Denver sucks up most of the funding, has always been the impression. And we do get a fair amount of funding, but gosh, we're a pretty big part of the region, especially not just population. When you think of things like transit and transit usage, obviously Denver County is the vast majority of transit rides in this region on there. And so that's an ongoing discussion. I wouldn't say that it is a current discussion. That's certainly not any direction that I've heard of from Mayor Johnston on this, but a challenge on that. It is, yeah, 2 doesn't feel like very many when it's 2 versus 56. I can concur.
Thank you.
Andy.
So I guess following up on Alan's question, we don't get a lot of votes, but how supportive are the other voting members to what we want? Like, is Denver getting what we want out of DRCOG?
You know, and that kind of goes back to that dual model on there. And, you know, ultimately, when we think of, so before it was just 100% and we all competed for that 100% pot on there. Now there's 2 pots where there's 20% that goes to the regional. We compete in there and we compete pretty effectively on there. And then that 80% getting divvied up by those 9. We've done just very rough math. We're getting about the same amount of funding that we were under the prior scheme. Because, you know, when we do the sub-regional forum, it is our priorities because we're the only ones sitting there. And I will say the board in the last couple tips that I've been there for the vote, folks are, you know, as long as it's not something totally off base, something totally wacky, the broad board has consistently, with very little debate, approved what the sub-regional forums have put forward on that. Definitely robust debates on the regional pot. And I know a lot of the other counties that have multiple municipalities in there are having that robust debate. I'd like to think we have robust debate. We just get to the right answer every single time in the sub-regional forum on there. But that we don't feel like because there was some concerns, and I had personally some concerns about, gosh, if this is the regional council of governments, why are we divvying it up? That feels like antithetical to the whole concept of regionalism on there. I still feel that way to some extent. I know a lot of the other smaller communities are super excited that they get to really have an amplified say in those sub-regional forums on there. But you know, so I think we're doing pretty good overall on it. But there's still some uneasiness. I very much outvoted on that. Not that I'm currently voting on the regional or sub-regional forum, and I've accepted that that's the way it's going. But I think we do okay. Could be more regional, in my opinion. June.
Yeah, quick data question. Have you all done a breakdown of what Denver receives compared to our population size and or land area? Because I imagine those would be the sort of, I mean, if I was estimating, are we drawing down enough, you know, proportionally for our region, those would be the metrics I'd immediately jump to. Do you have those numbers?
No, I don't think we've done that exact analysis. And it's hard, you know, different types of projects, different, you know, motivations, land area. Yeah, I mean, we're going to get our tails kicked by, you know, Adams County, a lot more land area on there. But not to say that that was the only factor on there, but that would actually be interesting. I'll talk to our team about seeing if they can't come up with something like that, just to see how we're doing. You know, we've done, as I was talking to Andy, some comparisons between the previous model versus this dual model on there. But yeah, it would be interesting to see maybe more on a per capita basis. I'd probably be sad if we did it on a per transit rider basis. That's probably where we fall the farthest behind on there. But that would be an interesting data point, but not one we currently have.
Yeah, and the reason why I do include land area in those metrics is because infrastructure is fundamentally a function of land, right? It goes on the land.
Yep.
So I think that land area metric is a useful one, perhaps sometimes more useful than a per capita, because on a per capita basis, you can artificially sort of dilute it by having just a ton of people per project. So yeah, just some metrics that might be interesting to think about.
Yeah, agree. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Looks like you answered everything about metropolitan planning organizations, Nick.
All in a day's work, Jake.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Nick. All right, handing it over for an update from the policy committee. We're a little bit over where we expected the Dr. Cog update, so maybe if I could ask for if 5 minutes is possible, that might help us stay on schedule. Are you giving that update, Gary, or?
Oh, you're asking me to, okay, sure. It seems like there's a lull in major elements. One, we had put forward a right turn on red statement that needs to be finalized and sent, I believe, and maybe you could help me with the status of that. The second is that the policy committee is doing everything or thinking about everything we can do to encourage safety projects as a significant priority. And that's just a general statement. And then the last is, I think we're very, very intrigued and or not intrigued, but very interested in the latest budget letter or suggestions that would support the Vision Zero goal. So that's just a brief overview. I don't know, did I touch on it, Joe? I don't think there's anything else from us, and I'll stay under 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think you got it. That was perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You both crushed the 5-minute timeline. All right, with that said, per Gary's request for an update on the budget committee, our next agenda item is an update from the budget committee.
That's me. Unfortunately, I don't have that much of a good update to provide. I've had a tough past month, so just I haven't properly coordinated that to get that budget letter in a finalized state. So I'm still very much interested in it. I think there's a lot of good bones and content in what we have so far, but I unfortunately don't have a good progress update to give on that. I'm hoping to turn it around. If folks are interested and want to put in some more hours on that letter as well, that would be appreciated. I'll do what I can as well on that. But also, yeah, no, that's what I've got.
Awesome. Thank you, June. Any questions for either our policy or budget committees? Gary?
Yeah, I do have a quick question, June, about do you have a draft of some sort that you're thinking about that we could react to? Or where are you with the letter?
We have a working draft, so it's not in a state, I think, to present, but we do have one. Let me pull it up, and I can, after this meeting, I can resend it out to all the DOTI advisory board members to make sure you all have access.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to pull privilege or anything, but the policy committee is most interested in seeing where we're headed with that. So if you could provide that to everybody or just the policy committee, that would be terrific.
Yeah, I'll get the draft sent or what we have to everyone on the board so you can see it and review what we've got. And also, if there's scheduled discussion for this letter at a future policy committee meeting, I think I know for myself, having that deadline is often really helpful for actually getting me spurred to do action on things. So that might possibly be helpful on this.
As a reminder, when is the next policy committee meeting, Gary?
I was just going to share that. It's August 21st.
Yeah, it's always the third Wednesday at I believe 10 o'clock in the morning.
And I know we've sent around the link to join that call a couple times. If you don't have it and are interested in joining, just email myself or Gary or probably Joe too. Any of us would be happy to share that along.
Yeah, please include me in that.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you both. All right, jumping over to odds and ends. I'm sorry, but I think we had a bit of a miscommunication, and I believe we have a new board member at this meeting. Danielle, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'd be happy to. I am Danielle Mo. I have been living in District 8 for, well, what used to be District 5, now District 8 in the East Colfax community for about 7 years. And yeah, just starting as the District 8 representative. Previously, I was the head of the East Colfax Neighborhood Association. And my full-time job is engineer with a large corporation.
Awesome. Welcome, Danielle. We're excited to have your experience on board. And so sorry about the miscommunication and challenge in joining.
No problem. Thank you.
All
So
right.
if I could just ask quickly, Christopher Johnson is no longer the District 8 representative. We should at least acknowledge his participation in past meetings and extend a note of gratitude. So
that's great. Thank you, Gary. Yeah.
Welcome, Danielle.
Welcome.
Right. I asked everyone to cut their time short, but it looks like here we are, 5 minutes to spare. So everyone can enjoy the rest of their evening a little early. Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you.
Gary, you're not the only engineer anymore.
Welcome, Danielle.
But 2 is enough. That 2 is fine.
Thanks all. Good to meet you.
Everyone.
Have a good one, everyone.